Welcome here to our micro lesson where we're going to be talking about relational energy. Stephen Barkley, who's joining us, going to be speaking on this topic today, is one of Acamus's facilitators for our courses this year, of which one of them is on accelerating student learning, which is an instructional coaching course. And I'm just going to put the link there into chat. And this personalized coaching course Stephen had done with us back in the fall. It went so well that we're asking him to come back and do it again. But also because at this time of year, we also just want to put some tools and some strategies into our educators' hands as quickly as possible. So I invited Stephen to share with us 3 things educators can be doing now that will help improve their ability to do instructional coaching. That said, Stephen had asked me to get some information from those joining us live. So I'm just going to be sharing a poll with you. The question really is like, what is your interest in instructional coaching? Are you a coach? Do you supervise coaches? Is coaching an element of your leadership role? Or is it something you just want to know more about? Stephen will like this information so that he can contextualize his presentation for our audience that's joining us live. But it's also something that's important to keep in mind in terms of the tools that he's going to be introducing to you throughout, of which there are 3. So if you could please answer those poll questions, that would be greatly appreciated. While they're looking at that poll and completing it, what I want to do is, I want to give you the floor now and just say thank you for doing this for Acamus and our network of educators. That especially at the start of this year, which again is going to be posing a lot of challenges to us, for taking some time to give us some quick feedback for what we can be doing going forward.
Welcome, folks. It's good to be with you today. So I'm coming to you from Switzerland, where I live now. My wife is a elementary school counselor in an international school here outside of Zurich. Previously, she had been in Basel. So last summer, we got to move into the Alps to where her school is now. So I actually have a view of 7 Alps out my window, along with a cow pasture and a little Swiss elementary school. And the kids pull their sleds to school, and then at recess time they sleigh ride in the winter down into my yard. So it makes a pretty great spot to be. I'm just going to jump in. I kind of got excited recently around the topic of relational energy when I read a blog written by Kim Cameron, who is a leadership consultant, and he described positive energy. It elevates and life-giving, and it fosters vitality, and so it's a key role for leadership people to be building into their environments, and that connected for me because much of our focus and ongoing research has been connecting on the fact that the social emotional element that teachers create in the classroom has a tremendous impact on student learning. And I just love this quote from Ken Robinson, that teachers create the conditions for success. He described it as similar to gardeners. You can't make the flower grow, but you can improve and design the conditions for the flow of natural occurring events. It's the same. I can't make students learn, but it's about generating that environment. So it struck me that I could pull Ken Robinson's quote and make a modification over to school leaders. Okay. School leaders create the conditions for success, just like gardeners. And I need to create that environment for teachers, to have teachers flourish, because teachers flourishing is critical to students flourishing. So I've spent the last 40 years consulting in the area of coaching and professional learning communities. And much of that work is around creating that positive energy that comes from a learning community. And for me, coaching is a key element within a learning community. I was fortunate that I began my teaching career and spent all of my teaching career in environments that were deeply embedded in teaming and in coaching. So I've described to folks I was probably vaccinated by that, and I've always pushed in my work to make that happen for more and more teachers. It actually wasn't until I began consulting and working as a teacher trainer and going from school to schools, I realized that the environment that I had entered teaching in was rather rare. And so I had looked in much of my work to see if I could build that. So I thought for our time today, I'd look at some elements from coaching that align with Cameron's writing about relational energy. So talking to leaders in general, he listed these 5 elements as being behaviors that leaders take on to create that relational energy that uplifts and vitalizes the people in the work site. And what I'd like to do is to give you 3 strategies that I think you can implement in any kind of a leadership role that have coaching elements in them that reflect back to these. And all of these in the course that we're offering would be we'd be studying the how-to and the practicing of it at a deeper level. So the first one that I'd raise is that I work from the phrase "everyone deserves coaching." And as I began to work in coaching, I found frequently a comment was being used that said, "everyone needs a coach." And I found I got a lot further if I changed that vocabulary from people needing coaching to people deserving coaching. So I make a statement that in a school, it's your strongest teachers who should be receiving the most coaching. And a lot of times people look at it in reverse. They see new teachers or struggling teachers getting coached. But the reality is, just like professional athletes or artistic performers, the further people get in their advanced skills, the more coaching they receive because they're working at an ever increasing complex level. So I wanted to offer up 2 strategies to you that I thought you could implement to help send this message. And the first one I've done with several schools, and that is to get your leadership team to design their professional growth plans and to go to the faculty and present them your professional growth plan. So this year, as a school leader, I'm looking to grow in this area, and then be able to request feedback from the staff. So for an example could be, I believe that that critical thinking on the part of a staff is important in the growth of our school, and that just like in the classroom, critical thinking is supported by questions that the teacher poses to students. So I'd like you to be thinking about the times that I'm working with you and questions I pose to you, or the time that we're in a staff meeting and the questions I'm posing. And I'd love to get your feedback on when you find my questioning advances your thinking and your learning. But nothing better than for the leader to model that desire of being coached and going first out to the staff. In schools that have instructional coaches, I frequently recommend that one of the things the instructional coach does is to coach the principal live at a faculty meeting. So imagine your faculty meeting begins with 5 minutes of a pre-conference. The instructional coach is pre-conferencing the principal. Instructional coach goes back and observes the meeting, and the last 5 minutes of the meeting is the instructional coach coming back and giving that feedback to the instructional coach. And a second one that I would click with this is to then expand that goal setting to teachers. So as an administrator, if you were able to ask each teacher, what is it that you're looking to achieve this year with your students that you've never been able to achieve in the past? And now you know that that goal is driving that teacher, and you now begin to look at coaching that teacher. I worked with one administrator who went as far as actually having teachers design the coaching form that they wanted the administrator to use when you had time to come into the teacher's classroom. And the administrator actually kept a set of files with a form ready to go on each teacher. And so if you were going to do a walkthrough to 3 different classrooms, you go pull those forms, and the teacher is in fact invited you to collect the specific feedback that would support the teacher's growth. The next item that I wanted to look at is drive your coaching to be based on the teacher's agenda. And so a lot of my work in teaching the conferencing skills of coaching is getting the teacher to clearly define what it is the teacher wants to make happen, and the role that the coach could play in assisting the teacher in making that process happen. So one of my favorite questions is somewhere into my pre-conferencing, getting the teacher to define for me the movie that he or she saw as they were preparing the lesson. So as you were prepping for this learning activity with kids, tell me about the movie that's inside your head as to what it is you see the students doing. In the training that I do in the course, I call that student learning production behaviors. So I'm big on the concept that teachers don't cause student achievement. Teachers don't cause student achievement. Students cause student achievement. And the task of the teacher is to figure out what is it that kids do that would generate the learning. And then my task as a teacher is to take on the teacher behaviors that cause those to happen. I actually worked with one administrator who, when he's getting a lesson plan from a teacher for a lesson that he's going to observe, he shares with the teacher that he doesn't want to see the word teacher in the lesson plan. He really doesn't care going in to observe the lesson what it is the teacher's going to do. What he wants is a clear picture of what it is the teacher's working to get the students to do, with the assumption that the teacher's going to do whatever he has to do in order to get those student behaviors. So a lot of the coaching training that I provide is getting people to describe those learner behaviors, then observe those learner behaviors, and then build your post-conferencing here around those learning behaviors. So what's the movie the teacher is running as they're planning? Then how does that movie compare to what the teacher actually saw happening? And then what might the teacher want to have different, or what might the teacher want to have as a next step? And that's a way in my coaching to clearly communicate that the teacher is the driving force here behind what it is we're doing. I just recently recorded a video and a podcast on this where I didn't even do the observation. I just did the pre-conference with the teacher and the post-conference. And in the pre-conference, the teacher describes the movie. And in the post-conference, she describes what it is she saw. and what she learned based on what she saw, and where she would want to move ahead from there. And the third element that I'd share with you is the critical nature of creating trust. And trust is needed to build that environment of coachability. And the key element here for administrators is that teachers have to understand when I'm coaching and when I'm playing a different role. So I'm a very strong believer that the person who does my evaluation can also do my coaching. They just need to be able to separate the two behaviors. You can't do them both at the same time. And it is a spot where quite a few administrators make a wrong turn, because most administrators get a lot more satisfaction from coaching than they get from evaluating. And so it's not uncommon in the middle of an evaluation that an administrator will want to switch and start coaching. The problem is, in a coaching environment, the teacher needs to be vulnerable. And making oneself that vulnerable in an evaluative role doesn't make a lot of sense. So I have to be able to clearly communicate that switch in message. And so it looks like this in how I define the different roles for people. And matter of fact, in many of the schools I work with, I suggest that this diagram that I have on the screen now actually go up at the first staff meeting and talk about who has which roles on this continuum, and how as a teacher do I know when a person is working on which role. So on the role all the way over on the left, the evaluator is coming into my classroom using outside criteria to judge what's happening against that outside criteria. All the way on the right, in peer coaching, the teacher's totally in charge. So the teacher's deciding who comes into my classroom and when do they come in, and what's the purpose of being there. In the middle, I stuck supervision. And generally, people who are working as supervisors work on both sides of the continuum. So sometimes they're evaluating and sometimes they're coaching. And that's where communicating that message clearly gets very important. I work with some administrators who do all of their evaluation meetings in their office, and they do all of their coaching meetings in the teacher's classroom, just as one way to communicate that difference. And then I took mentoring, which is generally generally a person working with an outside expertise, but that person tends not to do any evaluating, and that's why I stuck that in between the process there. Being able to communicate so that the teacher knows how I as a teacher should behave changes how the teacher responds to the feedback. And I just recently had a great example of this. I recorded a podcast with Tom Schimmerer, who it's written quite a bit on assessment. And we were talking about feedback to students. And Tom said jokingly that every now and then he hears a teacher say, "I give effective feedback to students and they don't use it." And Tom broke into a laughter and said, it's kind of an oxymoron. If kids aren't using the feedback, it's not effective feedback. So if you watch the students' response to the feedback, you got to go back and adjust. And that's the same, I think very often in evaluation settings, we gave teachers great feedback and they didn't use it. So once they didn't use it, we got to figure out that's not very great feedback. And so for me, the critical issue is figuring out how you move around on this continuum. So let me share that in the personalized coaching course that I'm offering. We will deal with all these spots, and we'll identify the different skills, the verbal communication skills, and how you process feedback within those different roles. And I would I would promise this really is a personalized coaching program. It's got a lot of one-on-one built into it, including the materials that I send you are driven by the individual conferencing calls that you and I have. And it would be my goal, working with anyone who joins me here, to see that you are gaining relational energy from the interactions that you have with the colleagues in the class and with me, and that you're developing your skill set to pass that on.